How you doing, Lex?
Oh, so good, so good. I know. I was like, oh yes, I get to talk to Hunter. Good to see you for a moment. I think last time I saw you, you're on my For You page on TikTok.
It's working, honey. Posting with consistency.
Exactly. I know. I'm like, there's a little plug for your go get your TikTok followers. No, I loved it. I love it.
Oh, thank you, Lex. Well, you know I adore you and everything you do. And today you're going to be teaching us and talking to us a bit about empowering inclusive workplaces and the role of intersectional ERGs. And I learned a new term today, IRGs, which is from
Ah.
another company. So I was like, oh, we got some
Yep.
we got some new terms. I was like, oh, excellent, excellent. I always learn things on the calls with PowerToFly. This is why I love being here.
Right. Yeah, I mean there's like IRGs, I think I've even heard EAGs. You can also do like just general DEI committees. So think of it, for everyone on the call, like you can definitely think of this as like an interchangeable term, especially if like your company does different acronyms, but it all essentially kind of comes down to the same mission.
Yes. I think there's the old phrase that all roads lead to Rome, but I think ours is more like all roads lead to Oz. That's kind of more the
Ah,
vibe over here,
I
I
love
think.
that. I love that. I want to be the scarecrow.
Absolutely. Tin Man right here. All right, Lex. Well, always a pleasure, and I'm here if you need me, okay?
All right, appreciate it. All right, everybody. So I have created a presentation for you all today. So I'm going to do my thing here and share my screen. So with that, I hope everyone can see the screen. I'm sure my lovely PowerToFly folks here will let me know if not, but as Hunter mentioned, my name is Lex. I also, so I use they, them pronouns. I've worked at PowerToFly for over 3 years now, and really excited to speak to everybody about empowering inclusive workplaces and the role of intersectional ERGs and on the topic of invisible disabilities and within the neurodivergent community as well. That's really going to be the focus of where we're looking at the intersectionality piece of how ERGs can be more inclusive to the disability community as a whole. I myself have a physical disability called osteogenesis imperfecta, essentially is a brittle bone disease, and I also am neurodivergent. So just keep all those things in mind as we're moving forward in this conversation today. We're really going to be talking about the umbrella aspect of disability. Just so we can make sure that everybody is on the same page, we will be discussing quickly at a high level what is intersectionality, just so we all have a good baseline of that definition. And same thing with ERGs. And as Hunter and I had just briefly spoke, there's a variety of different acronyms for employee resource groups, but a lot of what we'll talk about today will be able to be applied just the same. So with that being said, I will also provide, we'll go further into the role of intersectional ERGs and supporting the disability community. I'll also provide effective strategies and how you and your team can actually do some of the stuff on your own or even leverage PowerToFly to support you. Now, we do know that the vast majority of HR leaders, I think it's like 97%, report the organization has made changes to improve DEI, but a third of the employees, 37%, of employees say the same of the organization. So you can see there's a big discrepancy of leaders, 97% of them report that they've made changes, but only 37% of employees are saying that. So the reason why I give that as an example is we'll really discuss on how to measure that impact and essentially talk about some of those success stories that PowerToFly has worked on with some of our clients. All right, so diving into just the definitions of what intersectionality is and what ERGs are. Um, in short, intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorization, such as race, class, gender, as they all apply to a given individual or group. So I like to use myself as an example. I use they, them. I'm a part of the LGBTQIA community, but I also have a physical disability. So again, we're looking at all of the things that make a person diverse. And as an LGBT community member, I'm am a huge advocate to ensure that our pride events and social community gatherings are accessible to the disability community. Very similarly, when I go to disabled events, I always want to ensure that my pronouns are respected, that the trans community is included. So again, there's kind of both sides to that coin. When we talk about what ERGs are, employee resource groups, these are generally voluntary. Some companies might add some kind of pay to that. Generally, the ERGs are generally also given a budget, but these are employee-led groups within companies that are based on shared interests, identities, or life experiences. We'll dive into the various different kind of ERGs as well, but these can focus on various dimensions of diversity, such as ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, social economic status, or religion. But the idea around ERGs is that they can help create a positive work environment and foster a diverse and inclusive culture that aligns with the company's mission, values, and goals. Now, they also can help employees connect with like mentors if you're looking for someone who's wanting a promotion or pivot departments, also just supportive colleagues, but then also address surface issues that might be too risky for that one individual to share. It's a really good opportunity to create safe spaces where instead of you being a sole advocate for change, there's a community there to support you. Now, every company, I preface this because this slide only gives a couple high level, like most common ERGs, but every company generally has like their own different ERGs and groups that are highlighted. But what you'll see here on the left side of this slide is that these are the most common ERGs that I hear about when talking to people leaders. So these are excellent groups to start with. Excuse me, ERGs are also essential for fostering, inclusive workplace by creating spaces where employees of diverse background, as we can see with different, parent and caregivers, women's group, BIPOC, LGBTQIA, neurodivergent, military veterans. Now, the idea is to be able to amplify underrepresented voices, promote that intersectionality, and drive collaboration across groups. However, what I often hear from folks is these groups might actually be working more siloed or more independently. So really encouraging that inclusive nature is going to create more impact. But you'll see the disability group is on the right side. And the reason for that is because even though the neurodivergent group is within the umbrella of the disability community, oftentimes I hear that those are separate entities. And to be frank, that can be pretty problematic. And the reason for that is you're creating another wedge within that same group. And the neurodivergent group, what they can advocate for will also be beneficial to the disability group, right? But also same thing with the LGBT group and military veterans, BIPOC, women's. So when you focus more on an intersectionality lens of how to incorporate these ERG groups, you're going to have a much greater impact. Now, with that being said, I've already kind of given a couple examples of how I might advocate in the disability community for more inclusive practice for the LGBTQIA community, but same thing with the women's group or the BIPOC group, right? These different perspectives of overlapping identities can help organizations from designing products, policies, work environment that is more accessible and beneficial to the broader range of people. I'm going to keep nailing that point in because diversity is great for everybody, especially for those who are learning more about their identities or might become disabled later in life. While supporting employees with disabilities require a deep understanding of how their experiences intersect with other aspects of their identities, this is where we really ensure that ERGs are truly inclusive. They need to recognize that disability is not a standalone experience. It really is shaping those unique challenges and needs. So again, by fostering that intersectionality, ERGs can create more comprehensive support systems and also address like a full spectrum of that individual identity, right? I get really frustrated when people are like, oh yeah, like Lex, come and speak at like our LGBT panel about your pronouns. I can, but I would much rather talk about my intersection of lived experience of being a part of the LGBTQIA community and being disabled rather than just my pronouns as a standalone topic, because I think that creates a much better dynamic and something that you can really kind of like understand a completely different, like unique experience, because me being disabled is going to be very different than someone who's able-bodied and the LGBTQIA community that also uses they, them pronouns. Here at the bottom, just wanted to quickly highlight this statistic here. The National Organization of Disability study links that inclusive practices increase employee engagement by 30%. So again, when ERGs are working together, you're going to see that impact rather than them working silo. Now, we've talked about what my kind of experiences of intersectionality look like, but I thought these were some really good statistics. So I wanted to highlight what other kind of intersectionality you might see within your company, depending on the company as a whole, the industry, departments. So to really kind of keep this in mind of how disability can intersect with all different communities. So when we're looking here at the 46% of older people whose age are 60 years and over have disabilities, and more than 250 million older people have experienced moderate to severe disability. So I think I kind of love starting out with the statistics because at the end of the day, regardless of where we're at in life, as we age, the likelihood of us having a disability increases. So the more we focus on that today, not only is this going to help the older working class today, but as work life progresses, you're going to be able to hopefully retain your employees as they age, right? So there's a lot of other nuances to that to really consider, especially by addressing this intersectionality piece. ERGs can help create that inclusive policy and practice to support aging employees with disabilities, or just, again, or just aging employees. Going to the next piece, the 20%, this particularly speaks to class and disability, which I think is probably the most, I forgot what word I was going to use, but just really impactful piece of class and disability, because with this different social markers in between disability and class, due to the disproportionate rate of poverty that affects people with disabilities, it also demonstrates the lack of access to like personal and professional opportunities as well. So the more, and the reason why I wanted to call out class and disability is because as ERGs are able to better understand and address barriers related to income inequality, they can advocate and create more equitable opportunities and advocate for change that support the financial stability and career advancement for employees with disabilities, which I think is really, really important. And if you're not already employing people with disabilities, we'll talk about it later, but like really ensuring that your employer brand and talent acquisition efforts are inclusive to people that have disabilities and that they know that there's a spot for them at your company. All right, being a part of the LGBTQIA community, I've kind of talked about this a lot already, but I wanted to really emphasize that 2/3 of people with disabilities of, well, actually, missed that point, but working age gap in older people, they also want to work. But with the 3.25 million LGBT people out of 9 or 11 million in the US have a disability. So the LGBTQIA community and the disability community it has a huge overlap. A lot of that actually goes back to the neurodivergent community within the disability community. So again, as ERGs are working together, ERGs have to address these gaps to ensure that all voices are heard because of such a large overlap within the LGBTQIA community and the disability community. And when we go into the 40% marker here, we're going to be talking about race and disability. So when we're talking about 40% of Black Americans with disabilities live in poverty compared to the 24% of white Americans with disability, again, we're talking about class, we're talking about race, we're talking about disability. So there's a lot of intersects just within that statistic. And again, this is a great opportunity for your BIPOC ERG group to really understand what that pay inequality can look like for Black and Brown employees that have a disability, because you talk about the pay inequality for Black and Brown employees, but then even further with those who have disabilities, you're going to continue to see like a very big gap. Now, also talking about 36% of Latino adults with disabilities don't actually have a high school degree compared to the 16% of white with disabilities. So again, when we talked about class, we not only was that from a financial perspective, but also an education and professional opportunity as well. So I wanted to just kind of highlight like on a variety of different things of what intersectionality can look like. Some of these statistics I think can also speak to the greater hurdles that companies have to hiring diverse employees, but at the same time, companies can take real actionable effort to ensure that they're creating opportunities, either it be like upskilling, attracting and hiring, but also training to therefore be able to promote and retain that employee within. All right, jumping to effective strategies here, and I'm going to take a quick sip of water. We're halfway through. These effective strategies. Now, there's not, you don't have to go down in the row and do them in order. Really take the time to understand where your ERGs are at, either if you're leading an ERG or one of them or all of them, or if you're a people leader. Really understanding where your ERGs are at and what they need is really going to help you understand which step to take next. But I think from a, common aspect, often what I am talking to with people leaders and ERG leaders is really having those consistent conversations to be able to have reflective questions to promote empathy through storytelling. And what I mean by that is when we talk about disability and neurodiversity, right? Those are within the same group, but very different experiences. You might have someone who has a physical disability and someone who has ADHD. Those are going to be very different experiences within that same group. But do those conversations still need to kind of be happening together? Absolutely. You need to understand that empathy between each two, so you're not dividing and having a neurodiversity group and a disability group. They really should be put together. Also, just talking about neurodiversity at work. Oftentimes, those are individual, or I'm sorry, not exist, like you can't physically see those diagnoses, so it is something that you like might have to have like a more open, honest, creating that psychological safety for people to really feel comfortable talking about what they need. But then you also have, what does accessibility look like, especially from in-person, hybrid to remote work? All of what that looks like from an accessibility standpoint is going to be very different. So ensuring that you're really reviewing that on a regular basis and creating conversations so people can understand like how can we best support. PowerToFly offers a variety of dynamic reports and templates. So one of the things I often talk to a lot of my clients about is, let's get your ERG set up with an allyship guide. Do they have a mission statement that really incorporates the inclusivity and the intersectionality of all the work that you all are doing? But then we can also provide a 1-year ERG plan, really ensuring that, all right, quarter 1, this is the action items. By quarter 2, what have we completed in quarter 1? And then does that roll over into quarter 2? How does that change our timeline? What does that mean for our initiatives? That makes it makes you easier to be able to measure. This also just kind of double downing on the cross collaboration between ERGs if you're jumping in late here. But again, really ensuring that all of your ERGs are collaborating either with your own disability ERG or ensuring that there is a section within their ERG that helps them revisit this conversation and how you're incorporating disability efforts. Also need to ensure that leadership is represented of disability employees, but also if you don't have anybody in leadership that has a disability and they feel comfortable being out spoken about it, also just ensuring that your leadership as a whole has that understanding and awareness and training. So providing accessibility trainings, not only for all ERG members, but for leadership, and I would even recommend company as a whole. Sometimes leadership doesn't have a ton of time, which is why I love quick takes, micro learning. I think this is a really good opportunity to show people what is intersectionality, what is calling out versus calling in, what are some terms to avoid. Really great starting points there for leadership or folks who may not have a ton of time, especially if you have ERG leaders who are doing this voluntarily. We have PowerToFly has an inclusive calendar. So if you do not have that, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to provide a lot of this information and see how we can work with you all. But the ERG or the DEI calendar that we have is a great opportunity for ERGs to stay up to date on not only US celebrations, but global celebrations as well. And also just kind of helps you all stay in touch and like maybe even learn about new celebrations because there is Disability Awareness Month in July right after Pride. So just some really cool opportunities to practice intersectionality there. Now, I know I mentioned we would talk about measurable or measuring impact, and I know we have a couple minutes left here, so I want to spend time on each of these columns. So I mentioned a couple of these throughout the conversation, but to just summarize here, like investing in attracting diverse talent, explicitly sharing that people with disabilities are welcome to apply along with accommodations available to them. It is really important that that stuff is listed on your job description. I would also put it on your company page. There's a lot of really helpful resources out there that you can even check out at PowerToFly resources under the employers tab. But it's important that talent from these communities are able to see themselves working for your company and understanding that you're taking a proactive approach to supporting them in their employee experience with your company. We discussed those courageous conversations, consistent conversations. That's kind of what I mean by internal campaigns, just making sure that you're bringing this up on a regular basis to raise awareness about disability and how to combat ableism and how this is essential to create a more inclusive work environment. Uh, just kind of, again, mentioning the training piece because I think it's really important for either offering trainings or social programs focused on people with disability inclusion can also be an effective way to contribute to social change while advancing your initiatives from an intersectional perspective as well. Now, of course, we're always going to lead with best DEIB practices. So when creating events or meetings, following the DEIB calendar, seeking to explore intersectional possibilities like inviting an LGBT person with a disability to speak at your Pride panel, calling myself out there, I guess. But yes, intersectionality is key when we're talking about best DEIB practices. So really making sure that you all take a quick audit, analyzing what you all are doing at the moment. But of course, as you're doing those audits and creating those next steps, really thinking about what policies are inside your company. Everybody is going to be affected by more than just one mark of oppression. So really ensuring that you're covering all communities is going to be really impactful for your employer branding and your retention efforts, which again goes back to your measurable impact. So with that being said, I wanted to show one of our case studies that you can actually find online. And I think you all can see this, but this is our measurable case study. Just for the sake of time here, I wanted to call out that they were essentially looking at their DEIB efforts from an ESG perspective. So if you have environmental, social, governance, compliance that you need to stay within, definitely consider us as kind of help with that S piece, the social aspect. But we were able to create a DEIB strategy for them, which also incorporated creating their ERGs. So either if you're someone here looking to just learn about ERGs, or if you're starting off, or say you started your ERGs 5 years ago, but they're pretty siloed and we need to revamp and get things going and get people involved. Our consultancy package around ERG management is really great for that. We also have our Power Up platform that has a lot of ERG trainings and templates that I had kind of mentioned earlier. So as we created the ERGs for measurable, this also included the communication plan, the ERG application and sign up, which is really important. HR sponsors, leader nomination and voting process, project management process, and progressive responsibilities, because one of the things in DEIB, like, you absolutely need that professional accountability piece to ensure that not only does this remain important, but it is a continued conversation and something that the company and the ERGs as a whole are pushing forward. So I hope this helps to just kind of summarize the importance of the intersectionality piece with ERGs, but also how PowerToFly can support any of your efforts as a whole, even if it's just like using us as a resource. If you have any questions, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I believe one of my colleagues is also going to drop one of our demo links. So if you want to learn more or even kind of get some additional information, we do have free resources that we're happy to provide as well. But one of the things PowerToFly really prides ourselves in is we don't offer something that's cookie cutter. We really want to understand, your challenges, where you're at, where you want to be. So we would love to have a conversation to learn more and then figure out how we might be able to support you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lex, so much for that. Always a pleasure to hear. And what are some of the best ways for folks if they want to ask you questions? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Lex Keaton at PowerToFly. I think, it's a great way to just connect. I'm also happy to give you my email address, which is going to be lex@powertofly.com. And then, yeah, happy to like discuss a couple different things from, how do you have consistent conversations? How do you start consultancy? Even if you're struggling to get leadership buy-in or budget, let me know, because a lot of the information that we can provide a lot of insight of what has worked for other companies. We've worked with a lot of companies in different industries. So even if it's an industry that maybe you're new to, and you want to learn about what, your competitors are doing in a sense of like what's working, what's not. We're not going to drop any names. But yeah, happy to provide some measurable information.
Love that. Thank you, Lex. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. So good to see you.
I'll see you on the TikToks.
See you on the TikToks. All right.
All right, bye.
Bye.